We will be free! For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order!
Oh my God. It's okay. We're on a Sunday. So I'm going to do my special discussion that I brought, which is, I didn't get around to reading this until yesterday, but it's from the summer of 2019. Shows you how behind I am in reading the National Parliamentarian, which is like a little magazine booklet thing. So let's, this is a long paragraph.
For a second. I'm taking my bathrobe off because I'm trying to swim.
Yeah, but we've discussed this before, and the issue has to do with limiting debate in committees, because you can't call the previous question on a committee. So here we go. And what amused me about this question is, I told you the other day, I was like, when I'm reading it, they start dealing about like the personalities of the people on the bylaws committee, which actually ends up not being relevant to the actual question. But I started laughing because it reminded me of a certain bylaws committee that you and I are familiar with. Okay. The bylaws committee in our organization is very powerful. It not only reviews bylaws proposals by chapters and make recommendations at the biennial convention, it also proposes its own bylaws amendments, which then have a priority in consideration, and can present revisions to chapter proposals that have a priority on consideration over the original proposal. Recently, committee members are feeling self-important and going on in committee deliberations, examining questions in unnecessary detail, going back and forth about style and usage issues, and not getting the job done. Zip it, Mr. Seebeck, I know what you're going to say. Some committee members feel that the problem is the rule that in a committee there is no limit on the number of times that a member can speak on a motion, and it is not permissible to move the previous question or to limit debate. A member of a committee may only be denied the right to continue debating if he or she is speaking in order to obstruct the business of the committee, but only if there will be no opportunity to consult the body to which the committee reports within the time needed to resolve the problem effectively. A committee member who wants...
Whoa. Back up that last sentence again. That last part of that.
Let me word it in a less cumbersome way. If a member of the committee is going on and obstructing the business of the committee itself can the committee itself can tell that member to shut up if it is necessary to do so right at that moment, because there's no time to ask the parent committee to do that. Because generally only the parent can limit debate on a subsidiary.
Only the parent can discipline the children.
Basically. Okay. A committee member who wants to speed things along has suggested suspending the rules to allow the previous question to be moved in committee. Can she do that? Now, that's a tricky move, because normally you can suspend the rules, but can you suspend the rules here? Because it is a rule. It's a parliamentary rule in Roberts.
Right. So
do you think a member can suspend the rules to limit debate? Or suspend the rules to allow moving the previous question? Either.
Because we're in a committee, the answer is only if the parent body authorizes that to happen.
The parent body does not. That takes a special
vote by them to do it.
And in this situation, the parent body has not.
Then the answer then would be no.
Why?
Because
you're right, but I'm wondering your reasoning, because they give a very cool reasoning here.
Well, my reasoning is that the not charter, that's not the right term, but the instructions, help me out with a good word here.
I would consider a charter or a charging order.
Charge, that's the word I'm looking for. Charge of the committee to do the work they're doing, then the instructions attached to that charge would have to include the specific ability to do that from the parent body. Otherwise, they're subject to the same rules as everybody else, unless the parent body makes an exception because of exigent circumstances.
But they can suspend the rules in other circumstances. Why not this one?
That's the tricky part. And part of it is because you're in a small committee where you want to have more debate, more open discussion versus a larger assembly where a single person could wind up taking over the whole damn floor and blocking everybody else.
It's not necessarily a small committee, though. This would apply in, say, the National Bylaws Committee, which is 20 people or more because of alternates. I could tell you how, before I read this answer, how I would have argued. It's because the rule isn't because it specifically says that committees are designed in order to have the full and unencumbered consideration of the wisdom of all of its members, which is the reason given for. That's what I would have said. But here's what they said. And I think both of us are right, but here's another angle. It says, at the beginning, it should be noted that the motion to suspend the rules is permissible in committees, which is why I said it is permissible.
Right.
The motion to suspend the rules is a very flexible motion. Nevertheless, there are some constraints. A motion to suspend the rules cannot be adopted in violation of a fundamental principle of parliamentary procedure. And then it gives a reference. This text, however, does not speak directly to this situation. Some guidance can be gleaned from the motion to amend. So it seems like it's going on a rabbit trail. A motion cannot be amended to cause the question as amended to be out of order. Also, one motion cannot be amended to turn it into another type of motion. These principles can be applied by analogy to the motion to suspend the rules in this context. When the rules clearly prohibit the motion for the previous question in committee, the motion to suspend the rules, which requires the same vote, 2/3, as the previous question and is similarly undebatable and unamendable, the motion to suspend the rules cannot be used to do what is clearly prohibited by the parliamentary authority. An interesting logic.
And I'm not following it, to be honest.
I am. It is basically saying you can't use one motion to turn the original issue on its head. Like you can't do a motion to amend to turn it into a different kind of motion. So basically they're saying by analogy, and it is by analogy, which means it isn't on all fours. By analogy, you can't use the motion to suspend the rules, which is the same kind of motion as the motion previous question. It's undebatable, it's unamendable, requires a 2/3 vote. You can't turn a motion to suspend the rules into a motion for a previous question when the motion for a previous question is not allowed. It's sort of begging the question. It's sort of assuming your conclusion. It's a weird analogy, but that's the answer they give. I want to show this to Alicia because Alicia seems to think you could limit the time that you could get around this by putting time limits on your agenda. And I would say by the same logic, you can't do that.
It's an interesting predicament because the way I view it, and this is just my own opinion, is that when you're in a committee, the idea, as was mentioned earlier, is that you want to get all the feedback and input from all the members of the committee, when that's not necessarily possible in a large assembly just because of sheer volume. It is easier in a committee, even if it's like 20 members, as you mentioned, from the National Bylaws.
Well, it's not even because of possibility. I would argue where it says here, a motion to suspend the rules cannot be adopted in violation of a fundamental principle of parliamentary procedure. I would argue that the nature of a committee, The whole reason you refer something to a committee is to get the mature, full, considered judgment of all of its members. That's a fundamental principle. It's a fundamental characteristic of a committee. That if you wanted to call the question, you might as well have just left the question with the original body. So that's how I wouldn't have gone through this weird analogy. I would have just said it contravenes the essential nature of what a committee is. And you can't...
I'm buying that.
Right.
I can see the comments now. JJ's got a question there. Although, let me ask you something real fast. You mentioned when you originally read this that it gave a site, that it listed a citation, but you didn't say what it was. So what was it?
It gave a citation of the parliamentary, the fundamental principles of parliamentary procedure, which is number 263, which doesn't speak directly to this situation. I would make the analogy.
It's not in Roberts, or
263 in Roberts. You're Roberts, because this is an old.
Hang on, let me. Because that's under suspend the rules. Okay.
See, and JJ thinks you could put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, it says it right here, 263.15. Rules which embody fundamental principles of parliamentary law, such as the rule that allows only one question to be considered at a time, cannot be suspended even by unanimous vote. Thus, since it is a fundamental principle of parliamentary law that the right to vote is limited to the members of an organization who are actually present at the time the vote's taken, etc., and so on, the rules cannot be suspended the right to vote to a non-member. Likewise, since it is a fundamental principle that each member of a deliberative assembly is not only one vote, etc., and they can't authorize cumulative voting. Yeah, so that's where they're getting that from, the fundamental principle.
Right, and I would say that when describing a committee, it says why you have a committee, that you can't contravene the whole purpose of a committee by suspending the rules. That is what I would say. And I brought this question up as far as whether you could put time limits in the agenda, and the priests were divided on this.
Because committees are covered in Section 50. Right.
The priests were divided. Some say that you could do it by a 2/3 vote, and others say no. You would be.
Oh, I just saw something, and maybe this has something to do with it.
Where were you at?
I'm on Section 50 in the very first paragraph. It says, unlike a board, a committee itself is not considered to be a form of assembly.
I don't know what that means.
Well, here's my thought process on that. If a committee is not considered to be a form of assembly, then the rules would apply differently to it versus what it would for an assembly. With an assembly, you can suspend the rules to limit debate and things like that, as you would normally expect. But if it's not considered a form of assembly, then you wouldn't necessarily say that would apply to a committee.
I'd have to think about that. Yeah. But I'm looking for a different section here. 1 second. I'm looking for where you can't call the question. It's in committee procedures.
Yeah, it's probably in the same section.
It is, but it's later. Let me find it. Oh, it's. There's a footnote. But I'm trying to find. I found the footnote, so now I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. In order that there may be no interference with the assemblies having the benefit of its committee's matured judgment, motions to close or limit debate are not allowed in committees. And I would say that the committee cannot contravene that without the permission of its parent body. And you can't contravene that by adopting an agenda that essentially does the same thing. You just can't. You're not. And in my book, Conduct of Business in Committees, and it's under committee procedure, which is the third title.
Got it. Okay. where in small committees, chairman acts as secretary, etc., and so on.
Yeah, the next paragraph.
The informalities and modifications of the regular rules of parliamentary procedure. Okay.
Go down about 3 sentences. 3 or 4 sentences.
Yeah. The rules governing motions to rescind amendments previously adopted or reconsider or modified as stated on a different page, right? In committees, the chairman usually does questions, right?
Next sentence.
There's your order, yeah. Motions to close or limited debate. There's the asterisk. If a member abuses his privilege of speaking a limited number of times in debate or order to obstruct the business of a committee, such dilatory behavior should be reported to the committee's parent, which may then remove that member from the committee or adopt an order limiting or closing debate in the committee, like what I was saying, or take such actions as it deems advisable. However, there's no opportunity for this to occur within the time needed to resolve the problem. It's duty of the committee chair, to deny such a member any further recognition and speak and debate on the pending question. So they're saying that if there's no way to have the parent discipline the child, then the committee chair has to tell them right then and there to knock it off under the term of it being dilatory.
Let me tell you, I end up arguing this so much that I am, once I get my RP, I'm going to submit an article on my point of view on this to the National Parliamentarian. But not until I have the proper credentials. But and speaking of that,
right here that the parent committee can instruct the parent body can instruct the committee that they could do that if the parent body authorizes it.
This right belongs to the parent body, not to the committee.
Right. Correct. But they can instruct the committee that they can do that or not.
The committee can't usurp the right, and they can't usurp it by trickery, by parliamentary trickery either.
Right.
So that's my view. But there is disagreement on this, and I so wish they had clarified this in the 12th.
There was a time I used to believe we should be allowed to limit debate and call questions in committees, and I've changed my mind on that since. So, but
if you have the key to it is you have to have a very good committee chair.
Yes, who knows what you can and can't do.
Well, and that can control and direct the members. If you have a weak committee chair who doesn't have a presence, people like Aaron Starr will run roughshod over that committee chair.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
And when I've been chairing smaller committees, the way I've worked is to establish that presence by simply laying down the process on the front end and saying, look, everybody will have a say. We're not going to drown each other out, or no one's going to dominate the conversation.
Yeah, and
that tends to do the trick.
And the ones you and I generally chair have been smaller committees, but I can tell you the National Platform Committee, you have to have a good chair of that. And I
know. I was there once.
Yeah. I mean, I could be flattering myself. I thought I did a good job of handling it. But
the biggest problem with that committee was there were certain personalities who were trying to dominate the conversation. I'm not going to name any names. I might have been guilty a little bit of that myself, but the circumstances surrounding our travel was the biggest problem. And
then there was that issue of Schrodinger's alternate, and I still think I ruled properly. I'm not butthurt that I got overruled, because that's the right of the committee to do that. But that was also, oh my God.
Yeah, the biggest problem we had was a whole bunch of goofy logistics because shit happened.
Yeah. So
I mean, between the location getting canceled and our flights getting whacked out, it was a whole different department.
I'll be running for committee chair again for platform, but I don't think I'll get it. I think Lauren will probably get it. I hope she's a strong chair. I never worked with her on a committee, so I have no opinion.
See what happens.
So that's it for the Sunday. But I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to get my hair. Every time I look in the mirror, it's backwards. There we go.
Okay, so it's me again, because that was a Sunday.
That was an interesting Sunday.
Favor! Let's hear the opposition side. Like a stubborn donkey's bray. All opposed? You say nay. Opposed! Opposed! The motion carries anyway.